All right.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name's Cato Grace. I'm here with my colleague, Sudhir.
Morning.
And we're going to be talking all about Oracle and disaster recovery in the multi-cloud environment. I'm just going to give you a really brief overview of Site Recovery Manager and just give you a brief idea of what Site Recovery Manager is and what it does. And then Sudhir is going to lead the majority of the presentation, getting into all the detail about recovering Oracle using SRM. So that's basically what we're going to do. I'll take about 5 minutes. The rest is all going to be Sudhir. Really briefly, one thing I just want to point out is at VMware, we actually have 3 different DR solutions. Site Recovery Manager is one of them. We also have VMware Cloud Disaster Recovery, which is the new solution built on top of Datrium, the Datrium acquisition. The idea there is if you're able to utilize a cloud solution, this works based on VMware Cloud on AWS. And the idea there is that you're able to replicate your data into a scale-out cloud file system. What that means is that you don't have to have hosts running all of the time in the cloud. So you can just have hosts when you want to run a test, when you want to run a failover. Otherwise, you don't have to have those hosts sitting there waiting all the time and utilizing the resources. We also have VMware Site Recovery. That's built on top of Site Recovery Manager and vSphere Replication. That's available, again, for VMware Cloud on AWS. It provides a lower RPO, lower RTO disaster recovery solution into VMware Cloud on AWS. Again, the whole idea with VMware Cloud on AWS is everything is offered as a service, so it's something you don't have to deal with, have to manage, things like that. Site Recovery Manager is available for all of our hyperscalers as well as for on-prem. Site Recovery Manager supports a number of different things that some of the other solutions don't support, but again, that's specific to on-prem, things like multi-VM consistency groups, array replication, things like that. This is the architecture for Site Recovery Manager, what makes up a Site Recovery Manager environment. You'll notice that each side is a mirror of the other. They're the exact same on both sides. The reason for that is we want both sides each side to be able to run whatever you need to do in the complete absence of the other one. So we're going to have our hosts on both sides, a vCenter on each side, some kind of storage. It doesn't have to be the same storage. If you're using vSphere Replication, it can be any storage that VMware supports. You're going to have an SRM appliance. And then you're going to have, if you're using vSphere Replication, you would also have a vSphere Replication appliance. And then with array replication, depending on what you're doing, you might have an SRA, or if you're using vVols, you wouldn't have that SRA. So the steps that you would go through, what SRM is going to take care of for you in the event that you have a disaster. SRM will do all of the things on here automatically. You click run recover my VMs, SRM is going to take care of all of these things for you. First, it's going to replicate your storage. Now, obviously, that's assuming that your protected site is still up in some way. We'll replicate your storage. We'll power off the VMs at your protected site in the reverse order that you want them powered on in. Then we'll replicate your storage again. The reason we do that, the 2 replications as opposed to just 1, is we want your VMs to be off for as short a period of time as possible. And we want to get all of the changes, anything that happened as those VMs were powering off. We do a whole bunch of preparation for those VMs to get them ready to be recovered. So that's everything from getting your storage mounted onto the host, getting the VMs added into inventory. We also are able to customize the IP addresses if that's something that you want to do as part of that recovery. We'll power on the VM with the network disconnected, change the IP address, and then power it off, and then power it on again as part of, in the order that you want it recovered in. So that is a very brief overview of SRM. If afterwards you have more questions, I'm happy to answer those, but Sudhir is going to now get into all the detail about using SRM and the other DR solutions for recovering
Thanks, Cato.
Oracle.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you guys hear me in the back? Good. All right. So essentially, right, see what happens is Cato spoke about the SRM, he spoke about vSphere replication, vVol at a very high level, right? And he basically spoke about how you are able to replicate it using either storage-based, vVol-based, or even an appliance-based, right? But when you start looking from the top, which means the workloads, right, there are certain things we need to understand. So typically what happens is, and I come from the world of databases, right? And again, this session is about Oracle, but this would work for things like SQL Server, SAP, any database, any application, right? Just take the word Oracle out and put the word application in here. See, what happens is everybody has that notion that day one operations are very important, right? The installations, the configuration, so on and so forth. But you'll be so surprised to know that day two operations are actually more important than day one, especially your patching, the restores, the cloning, the refreshes, right? If you have to do data masking, so on and so forth. So the ask here is, at some point of time, the ask here is, okay, I need to choose the best or the optimal business continuity solution. I have to choose the correct choice of DR. Reason being, databases are not static. If you created a 1 terabyte database at 10 years from now, that's not going to be a terabyte database. That's going to grow by leaps and bounds, right? So what happens is when the database grows, think of it, you're a production shop, and I'll give you an example here. 9 o'clock is when the production shop opens, goes all the way till 6, that's OLTP kicking in. 6 to 9 is data warehousing. 9 to 12 or 9 to 2 could be your backups, right? And 2 to 5, you would be running some massaging. 6, you're open up for business. What happens if the backup increases the window, right? I spill into production hours, there's a breach of SLAs, you guys lose money, right? So that's why these restrictions, or I would say these challenges would have to be kept in mind. And again, of course, storage-based replications are the fastest, but not every time can you do a storage-based replication. So here's the thing, not one shoe fits all. We have to find out which is the best solution that would fit your billet or your databases here, right? See, anything you do, whether that's business continuity, whether that's disaster recovery, would have to happen on 3 different levels. The application level, the vSphere level, and the storage level. Right? Cato spoke about the storage level, the VR, the SRA, the SRM, the vSphere replication, right? I'm not going to go very deep on the Oracle level, you guys already know, or I'll probably go a bit on a very high level. Let me talk about the business continuity, right? From an application perspective, when you talk about Oracle databases, you have Oracle backups, right? The Oracle RMAN. I'm sure you guys must have heard of Recovery Manager. A DBA comes and says, I back up my database using Oracle RMAN. That's what Recovery Manager stands for. I do my cold backups. I do my hot backups. I do my crash consistent backup. Now, these technologies are completely transparent to any underlying platform. It works as a charm, whether you're running a database on Exadata, whether you're running it on physical x86, whether you're running it on power systems, you run it on OVM, you run it on VMware, you go to the cloud. They are exactly the same. It doesn't change. Why? Because everything is application based, correct? The second level that we talk about, or that we want to talk about, is VMware Snapshot and VMware clones. Can we use those technologies to back up an Oracle database? Absolutely, right? And this is how you guys have been doing it. You guys are VMware experts. This is how you've been doing it for ages, right? You take a crash, this is an example of a crash consistent snapshot. How many people have heard of the word crash consistent, or at least familiar with? So you know what it is, right? You have an Oracle database running, you take a picture, right? Or you have a database running on a snapshot, or on a LUN, sorry. You take a snapshot, that's a picture, right? And that's a crash consistent, that's a point in time. Which means if you bring it up, Oracle does what's known as instance recovery. It does the crash recovery. And you want to take it a bit more forward, you apply archive logs and you bring it to a point of time till you're good enough, right? Is that a viable form of backup? And the answer is yes, it's a viable form of backup. Because what happens is with a snapshot, when you talk about a virtual machine and the VMD case, the virtual machine is coerced. It's not like it says for I equal to 1, to the end of VMD case, take the first VMD case snapshot, then take another one, then take another one, then take another one. If that happens, then you or I are looking at database corruption. That's not how it happens. It's a point-in-time snapshot of the entire component of a virtual machine, right? And if you have to revert it back, shut it down and do it, right? I won't waste much time here because you guys know exactly what that is. VM clone. There are 2 ways you can do it, right? You have a snapshot. From a snapshot, you clone it. You guys know how you guys have been doing it. Or if you clone it directly, it takes an implicit snapshot and then it clones a database from there, right? So the only thing that I'm trying to emphasize here is right order fidelity. That's the most important thing from an Oracle database or any database, right? Are the blocks arriving in the correct order, right? Or is it arriving out of the order? The answer is yes. VMware Snapshot, VMware clones, vSphere replication, SRM with vSphere replication, SRM with vVol, SRM with storage array replication, SRM with VSR to the cloud, SRM with VCDR. They are all right order fidelity. They all guarantee right order fidelity. That's very important, right? Storage-based snapshots, right? So with the storage-based snapshot, that's pretty much you do it the same way, right? You have a VMFS data store, you have your VMDKs of a virtual machine or a bunch of virtual machines comprising databases on that particular LUN. You take a storage-based snapshot. Once you do that, you clone from that storage-based snapshot, that LUN, right? You have to resignature it. And once you resignature it, then you register the virtual machines on the cloned LUN. And lo presto, now you have a copy of the virtual machine, right? See, here's the thing. There are pros and cons to every approach. Every approach are pros and cons to this. This is a great approach of doing it, right? But then what happens is, somebody would come back and say, well, look at this. This particular LUN has so many virtual machines. How about if I just want to have a database snapshot, which means now you dedicate or start dedicating data stores, right, to virtual machine, which is a bad practice. Guess why? SCSI LUN limit, 1024. At a very point of time, you will overrun the SCSI LUN limit. That's why you will see a lot of us talking about vVols, virtual volumes, right? That kind of saves or that kind of solves this problem. But then again, you have customers with processes of mounting these clones of LUNs, right, over to ESXi servers, resignaturing it. So yes, this is another viable form of backup. Third way, what if I just want to take a VMDK level snapshot? I'll give you a use case here, right? Let's say you have a virtual machine, you have two databases, DB1, DB2. I do not want to take a VMware snapshot, a virtual machine snapshot. I don't want to take a LUN-based snapshot. I just want to take a VMDK snapshot of that VMDK, and from that VMDK snapshot, clone it and attach that VMDK to another virtual machine. Your use case could be cloning a database so that the QA team can use that for their software testing, correct? That would work as well. All you have to do is rescan the bus, and once you rescan the bus, the Oracle ASM, or if you're using Oracle Filter Driver, you would have everything, would scan it, would see the new device, you bring up the database. If you have to change the name, you do that. I mean, this is DBA 101. This is exactly what your DBAs will be doing back home, right? Saying, give me a database, I'll change the database name, I'll change the database SID, the SID, I'll give it a new TNS name.aura, I'll have the QA guys point to it, and I'll have the QA guys do it. So I'm not saying anything new here, right? I'm not discovering anything new here. I'm basically reiterating what the Oracle guys do, right? But all of these mechanisms can be used to back up an Oracle database. That's to do with BC, business continuity, right? When you start looking at DR, from a disaster recovery standpoint, right, we have the Oracle Golden Gate. Everybody heard of Golden Gate. The real expensive tool, beautiful, but it works, right? Works as a charm. DataGuard, I swear by DataGuard. I love DataGuard. I'm an Oracle guy. My background been doing Oracle databases for 26 years before I joined VMware in 2012, right? So I swear by DataGuard. It works as a charm. If you have the physical, the logical, the snapshot, or the active DataGuard, everything works. But then again, would that work for every scenario? Probably not, right? Can I marry VMware SRM with DataGuard? And probably some people in the room would say, but those are different replication technologies. SRM doesn't replicate anything. DataGuard replicates those blocks from point A to point B, correct? How would you marry those? I'm using the workflow, or I'm using the power of the SRM workflow to do the DataGuard role transition. See, what happens is you have a primary database, correct? You have a standby database. Those redo logs get shipped over, not redo logs, I would say the change vectors get shipped over, the block changes get shipped over the wire from point A to point B, right? Disaster happens on site A, but somebody has got to go to site B and say, change the mode from standby to primary, right? Well, this gentleman would do that for one database. What if he had 10,000? Would you sit the entire weekend and type the same command again and again? No, you wouldn't, right? Why don't you use the power of SRM? So what happens is you designate a virtual machine as a control VM, and when that control VM or the virtual machine comes up, that has a shell script that would log on to all these standby databases and run that command 10,000 times. Change the mode from standby to primary, change the mode, right? So when you're looking at scale, you're looking at mass deployment, you could use the workflow, the power of workflow of SRM for something like this, right? Again, this is an example here. You could use that for anything else you want. All right. vSphere replication works as a charm, right? If you have to set up a recovery plan for Oracle DR, it does work. And this was a crash consistent recovery. Again, what happens is, many years ago, many moons ago, right? When cold backup and hot backup was the only accepted way of backing up an Oracle database, this is during Oracle 8i. Many storage vendors, they went to Oracle and said, you know what, look at my customers. They're really pissed. You know why? They can't be shutting Oracle databases down. You cannot be putting these backup databases into backup mode and doing it. Can you give me something else? Oracle came back and said, you know what, I'll give you crash consistent. You take a snapshot, but there are certain guarantees that you have to give me, which means the write order fidelity has to be guaranteed, right? The timestamp and the date of the snapshot has to be stored. If you storage vendor, Dell EMC, Hitachi, HDS, Pure, you guys are able to guarantee that, sure. I will accept it as an accepted way of Oracle recovery. So then the storage vendors, they went back, they worked on their storage arrays, and they came back and said, yes, my snapshot is crash consistent backup of an Oracle database. And that's exactly what it is, right? What we do here is, this is not a LUN based, but this is vSphere based, vSphere replication based. Again, the write order fidelity is guaranteed for all VMDKs across a VM. And that's the unit of granularity, right? You're looking at a virtual machine, all of the VMDKs that compress an Oracle database, you put it in a recovery plan, you take a snapshot of that, you power off the Site A virtual machines, the Site B powered on, alert log file. See, what happens is, just like you have the var log messages, right, on a Unix system. Similarly, for an Oracle database, you have something what's called alert log file. And that's why you go to the alert log file to see if there are issues or not, right? So when we did this test, we found there were no issues here. Same thing, when you have a storage-based DR, you would do the same thing here as well. You have a LUN-based recovery where you essentially, right, you have your LUN-based recovery from point A to point B. You could even do that for your virtual volumes as well. Again, in this case, you would have to rescan your ESXi service. Your alert log file, that's the final source of truth. That would tell you if the Oracle database comes up or not. And then, of course, your virtual machines are powered on the resignature process. I mean, I know we are going on a very high level here. If this was probably a 45-minute session, we would probably go deep dive into every screenshot and every step as to how one would go about it. But the only reason we are showing you all this is, yes, all of the steps that you have been doing so far, you could extend that to workloads, right? It doesn't mean that you have to just do it only for virtual machine, for application servers or web servers, even databases. It works as a charm here, right? vVol. How many people have heard of vVols? Virtual volumes. A lot of people, right? You could even do that for a vVol. And Cato just said that when you're doing a vSphere replication, right, when you're doing SRM with vVol, it doesn't go through any SRA. It goes to the VASA provider, right? So we were even able to do that. Oracle database sitting on a Pure array, we were able to then use vVol, or for the matter of discussion, any storage vendor that supports vVol, right? That works as a charm as well. Everybody has heard of VMware Cloud on AWS, right? We released that in 2017, and then we had the other cloud flavors as well. The OCVS, Oracle Cloud VMware Solution, AVS, GCVE, but the cloud of the flavor of the day is VMware Cloud on AWS that we'll talk about, right? If we have to use VSR, or that's what Cato spoke about, the VMware Site Recovery, that works as well. It's almost the same as vSphere replication, correct me if I'm wrong. It's just another marketing word, another buzzword for vSphere replication up to the cloud. But if you open up the covers, you open up the blanket, at the end of the day, it's exactly that, right? So we were able to do that. So again, I'm going to keep hopping on a point here to the point of ad nauseum, this write order fidelity, because that's the first thing that any Oracle DBA would come to you, any SQL DBA, any MongoDB DBA would come to you and say, you know what, if the blocks don't arrive in the right order, man, things are not going to work for me. That's like corruption. So, really, this doesn't work for me. I'm going to go back to the same old, sim mir, sim split, sim snap restore, those kind of technologies, right? So we have to make sure blocks arrive in the right order here. If we have to do a VCDR, VCDR works with snapshots, right? Wherein you take snapshots, you send it to the scale-out file system, the SCFS, right? Datatrium product. And then at some point of time, if you have to restore, you restore from that particular product. Again, the thing to keep in mind, VCDR uses regular snapshots. It replicates to the smart cloud file system. It's a point in time, which means, yes, it's consistent. Write order fidelity is guaranteed here as well. But this is what I want to take a pause and show you guys, right? If we have to bring it together, the business continuity, the disaster recovery, the way that you would read it is this way. Look at the column in the middle, the on-premises primary. Nothing changes, right? It's the same RMAN, it's the same data pump, it's the same cold backup, hot backup. Everything that you guys have been doing on-prem is what you will be doing on VMware as well. If you were to go a step down, when you start looking at the vSphere layer, You have the VMware Snapshots, you have the VMware clones. That works as well. And if you go down to storage, you have your storage-based snapshots, storage-based clones. So that doesn't change. So the middle column doesn't change here. If we have to provide disaster recovery to another site, site B, application-wise, you have your Golden Gate, you have your Data Guard, you have your backup and restore, or you have a third-party backup as well. For example, DB Visit, that works as well. If we have to use the vSphere way of doing it, you have your SRM, you have your vSphere replication, we spoke about it, at least on a high level here, right? And if we have to do a storage base, so be it. You could use SRM with vVol and with array-based replication as well. Now, if we have to send your backups to the cloud, if we have to DR to the cloud, this is exactly how you do it. Your application way replication works as well. There's no change in there. Your data guard, your Golden Gate works. If you have to use any vSphere-based disaster recovery, that's your VSR or VCDR. So again, I'm just trying to bring the whole thing together, give you guys a complete picture saying, you know what, these are the options you have. And if a question is, which is the best way to do it? I don't know. I have no idea. Which is the best way to do it? That's something that you guys can answer. Because when you go back home, you look at the tools that you have, look at the soft skills, you look at the hard skills, you look at what you have, right? And based on that, you would say, you know what, I think VCDR is great. Or I think data card is great. Or I think, you know what, storage-based replication is great. So really, just trying to summarize everything up here, right? This is something I wanted to highlight here. I'll just take a couple of minutes. See, what happens is once you go to the cloud, it doesn't mean work stops there. Just because you go to VMC, it doesn't mean, oh, okay, I'm done, right? Everything is gone to VMC. You know, the AWS guys or the VMware guys are going to take care of it. You would still have to back up your archive log files, correct? You would still have to back up your databases. You still have to run your QA, non-production databases as well, along with your production databases. So the question is, the option we have, the Cloud Flex Storage. How many people have heard of Cloud Flex Storage? The option that new release that we had, right? So essentially, can we use that as another option, as another viable option of providing the much needed storage we have without taking away the tier 1 vSAN internal storage, right? You have only so much vSAN internal storage. If I give that for archive log and backup and tier 2, I don't have any storage left for my production databases. Can we give that to Cloud Flex Storage? Yes. But do I really believe you? Because I'm an Oracle DB, I don't believe you, right? I'm a paranoid guy. So I got to make sure that I run my test. You got to come up with numbers. You have to make sure that you convince me. So this is exactly what we did, right? A 4-node i3 Metal with Cloud Flex Storage 21.5, which means it's the latest and the greatest Oracle version. UVK 8.7, 8.8 is released. I know 9 is released as well, right? We did two test cases. The very first test case was for the paranoid Oracle guys, like me, right? Wherein you have no mirroring, no RAID 1, no RAID 5, no RAID 10, no nothing, correct? And then we said, set the OSR, the object space reservation to 100%. You see? So nothing, I'm not going to take anything for granted. I'm going to make sure that I have kind of eager zero thick, OSR 100%. I have no mirroring. That was test case 1. Test case 2, I just used the vSAN default policy, right? And I said, let's run a load generator. SLOB here stands for Silly Little Oracle Benchmark. Silly Little Oracle Benchmark. All it does, it just plugs in IO to the database, correct? And that's what we did. We set the work unit to 3, which means I want to drive the most amount of IO, right, without stressing redo. My intention is to get physical IOs, not get entangled in the redo, physical IO. Look at the numbers we got. So the difference between the custom policy, the Oracle custom policy, and the vSAN default, that was 4.1. So if I were to run, case in point being, if I were to run my production databases on Cloud Flex Storage, right, as compared to vSAN, probably the difference would be in single digits, but is that what I would be doing? Probably not, right? That's not advisable because this is tier 2 storage. The performance is comparable to vSAN, but the tier 1 vSAN storage is reserved for your production databases because at the end of the day, that's what the databases need, right? But this is just to elucidate a point that yes, this storage is performant enough for you guys to place your archive log, to place your backups, to place your non-prod, your staging, your dev, your test, or what have you, right? Based on that. So remember, at the end of the day, any platform, any storage, right? You have to look at the workload profile. And that determines if the platform or the storage is good for that. It's not me coming and telling you, man, you need to go for vVol or you need to go for NFS. You need to come back and say, I had a look at my database. I had to look at the Oracle AWR, the reports, and my IOPS is this, my CPU is this, my memory is this, my network is this. I don't think that NFS data store is going to work for me. I need this. It's the other way around. Always remember, everything comes from the top. The workload drives the requirements here. But if there's anything that you guys can take away or will take away from this session here, right? I know it's been a rapid fire or a rapid session here. Is this one link? Pretty much everything that we produce from an Oracle perspective, Oracle on vVol, Oracle with VCDR. I mean, I co-wrote the paper with Cato here, right? Everything you can find it here, whether it's Oracle licensing, technical KB articles, blogs, so on and so forth. It's up here, but I will be there at the expo floor. Cato will be there at expo floor, right? He's the god of SRM, like I call it. So if you guys have any questions on BCDR or whatever, please come ask him. If you have any questions on Oracle workloads, things work, things don't work. I agree with you. I don't believe you. I'm going to call you bluff off. Trust me, I love a great conversation. Come talk to me, right? But thank you for coming.